say not really? Okay, so the outer layer here is dura mater. You can see the two layers of the dura mater. And what is between those two layers? What is that space that's shown in dark blue?
Superior sagittal sinus.
Superior sagittal sinus. Very good. Okay, and let's see here. This next layer that's shown in this kind of pinkish color is the arachnoid. The arachnoid, yeah, it's kind of pink. Okay, now there is a potential space there between the dura mater and the arachnoid. What is that called? Subdural, right. Potential space. Okay, and what is the layer that's shown in red that's fused to the brain? The pia mater. Okay, so you know that the subarachnoid space is shown in this purple color, right? It is purple on here. So this is all subarachnoid space. All of the space here where the arrows are, that's where CSF is located. It's going to go through the subarachnoid space, eventually going through those little arachnoid granulations. Yeah, and then it will be reabsorbed into the blood in the superior sagittal sinus, okay? So you can see all the meninges on here. You can see the falx cerebri, tentorium cerebelli. You can see the spaces between the meninges, okay? All that stuff. Do you guys have any questions on that? Okay, so the meninges around the spinal cord, you can see on this model. Now this is where the epidural space is an actual space. Around the brain, it is a potential space. Okay, so here it's an actual space where the fat and the blood vessels are. And so again, you want to ignore this thing out here because that's a ligament. This is the dura mater. Okay. So let's talk about the brain, and then we'll go back to the spinal cord. Okay, now, excuse me, any of these models that show parts of the brain, you should be able to identify things that are clear. I'm not going to ask you to identify anything you can't see here. Like I wouldn't ask you, you know, like what's inside this area here. Okay, just the stuff that you can see. Okay, so what is that C-shaped tract? Corpus callosum. What type of tract is that? Based on the direction the axons are traveling, what type of tract do we call that? We have association, projection, commissural. It's a commissural tract, right. And this one that goes down?
Fornix.
The fornix. And what is that thin membrane right there between them? Septum pellucidum. What is the ventricle that would be lateral to that? The lateral ventricles, right. Lateral ventricles are lateral to the septum pellucidum. Okay, and let's see here. What is this area right in here? This thing that looks kind of oval?
Thalamus.
That is the thalamus. Okay, big bulge right here. Things sticking out anteriorly. It's the pons. Okay. And let's see what else. You see the corpora quadrigemina here. You can see the cerebral aqueduct, fourth ventricle, arbor vitae of the cerebellum. Again, anything that's clear, you should be able to identify. I'm not going to have you identify anything you can't see on the model, okay? So, for instance, in the midbrain, you guys have that cross-section in your book that shows the red nuclei and the substantia nigra. I will ask you to identify them on the diagram, not on a model like this where you can't see them, okay? Let's talk about this model a little bit. Now, you guys know that these things here are basal nuclei, right? And the axons coming up here that are going to go up toward the cortex are?
Corona radiata.
Corona radiata. Very good. What is this thing again right here?
Corpus callosum.
It's a corpus callosum. Okay, so down here below the basal nuclei, this is thalamus. Okay, and let's see, we know the cerebellum would go here. That's been removed. So you can see these things here connect to the cerebellum, right? These are the cerebellar peduncles. Okay, the big one that's sticking out laterally is the middle. Right, it's the middle. Okay, so be able to identify those on the model. Okay, you guys know you do not have to identify all of the cranial nerves here. I'll ask you to identify them on the diagram. Okay. Do you have any questions on this model? What are these things here on the anterior part of the midbrain? Look like fenestrated. Cerebral peduncles, right. That's where projection tracts travel through the midbrain. Cerebral peduncles. Okay. Let's see. know these are parts of what layer of the meninges?
The dura.
The dura mater. So this thing right here is supposed to be
Falx
cerebri.
cerebri.
This is in what fissure? What is that fissure called?
Longitudinal.
Longitudinal. And this thing is?
Tutorium
What
cerebelli.
fissure is that in?
Transverse.
Transverse. Okay, very good. Okay, let's talk about the cerebral cortex and the functional areas. So you guys know the functional areas are the parts of the cortex that are named after their functions, right? Okay, I will try to be very clear when I label these for you. Okay, so what is this thing here shown in red? If you were to name the functional area there, what would that be? Primary motor. Okay, just anterior to that would be premotor, or you can say motor association area. Either one is fine. Okay? And how about right down here in the left hemisphere? Broca's area. Right, Broca's area is also called motor speech. Right. It's where muscles or neurons are located that control muscles that we use when we talk. Okay, and how about the most posterior part of the occipital lobe? Primary visual.
Primary visual.
And how about right along this lateral sulcus here? Primary auditory. And this bigger area kind of around that would be
Association.
auditory association. Okay, very good. What is this sulcus called right here? Central sulcus. Ooh, very nice. What is the part of the brain that's inside this sulcus?
Insula.
The insula. Very good. Okay. On these sections, again, I'm just going to ask you to identify stuff that's really clear. Okay, so things like the cortex, or the corpus callosum, the lateral ventricles, things that really, you can see very clearly. And again, what is that sulcus here? Lateral. Right, it's on the lateral sides. It is the lateral sulcus, and notice right inside that you can see the insula. Okay, it has its own cortex, so it's just inside that sulcus. Also, you can see, what are these nuclei altogether? This group of nuclei? Basal nuclei. Okay, so you can see this one that's right next to the lateral ventricles. What is that nucleus? It's the caudate. Right, caudate. And this one that's further out here, kind of a triangular shape. Lentiform. Now, on the diagram that shows this, you can see the globus pallidus and the putamen. You can differentiate those, but on this, I would accept just lentiform. They're hard to differentiate here. Okay? Do you guys have any questions on these sections? Same with those other sections. We have that mid-sagittal section, okay, and the transverse. Just things that are really clear.
We also use diagram for the nucleus?
Yeah. Yeah, that shows the frontal section with the nuclei. Yes. Okay, let's take a look at the spinal cord. Oh, and let me just say about the brain. On the written exam, you guys know you need to know basic functions. So for the different parts of the brain, you do need to know where they're located, like what region of the brain structures are located in. So, for instance, what part of the brain is the pineal gland located in?
Thalamus. Cortex. Midbrain.
Pineal gland is part of the diencephalon. Diencephalon. Okay. What part of the brain is the red nucleus located in? Red nucleus? Midbrain. What part of the brain are the pyramids in? Medulla. Okay, so you need to know for each part of the brain, all the structure is located there. Okay, so think about, when you're going over all those different structures, remember what part of the brain they're in, and basic functions. Okay, on the spinal cord, you guys, of course, need to know horns of the gray matter, columns or funiculi in the white matter. And you can see all that on these models. For the tracks, this does not show you all the tracks in the white matter. I would not have you identify them here because you just can't see them. But remember, you have those diagrams in chapter 16 that show you the tracks. So those will be on the test. Just the tracks that we talked about, you need to be able to identify. So remember when we were just talking about lateral spinothalamic, I kind of circled it there. Anterior spinothalamic, the fasciculus gracilis, and cuneatus, corticospinal tracts, just the ones we talked about, okay? For the written exam, you need to know the information that they carry.